Hi, this is George. We're here for another one of our midweek pick-me-ups, and this week we're going to talk about one of my favorite passages again. This time it's not a single verse, but rather several verses. It's actually the first chapter of the book of Psalms. I love that. I love so many different scriptures as I read through them, but this one gives me hope and encouragement, and I hope it gives you hope and encouragement too. So without any further introduction, let's dive into the text and see why I consider this one of my favorites. I'll be reading from the New King James Version. I've got my Bible here in front of me. It says, "Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the paths of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of waters, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly will perish." Again, that's, as I said, one of my favorite. My little dog, Henry, gave me an example or an illustration for this morning as we were walking. It was kind of interesting. He has a tendency when we walk around the golf course here close to where we live. And as we walk around the golf course, I will let him off of his leash and he'll explore. He'll see something and it will catch his attention. And then after he's seen it and it catches his attention, he will go over towards whatever it is. And then after he gets to where it is, he'll investigate whatever it is, and he may find himself staying there for a few minutes until I call him back. He always comes back when I call him back, so I'm thankful for that. But I see him doing that. That's the way sin progresses. One of the things I learn from this and see in this as I look at it is that sin progresses as we look and we take a second look. And then we find ourselves walking a little closer and maybe standing there and watching, and until the point where we find ourselves sitting down and participating. And I've often thought of this passage as talking about how sin is progressive. It starts off with that second look. It goes with dwelling, and it goes a little further when we finally begin to participate in whatever the activity is. But that's not all he's talking about here. He's talking about the people or friends that we participate with. My little dog will eat almost anything. And that's why he is attracted by whatever he sees, and he wants to eat whatever it is. He's supposed to eat only what we feed him, but sometimes he gets away enough and finds a way that he can eat a pine cone or something like that. He does those kind of things. What I have noticed, though, when we're walking and there are other dogs around, some of the other dogs are friendly, most of them are in our neighborhood, and there'll be a dog there that maybe doesn't pay much attention to what their master says. Maybe they got out of their pen. Maybe they haven't been doing what they're supposed to do. And when Henry gets in the company of those other dogs, he has a tendency to want to do what they do. And the warning here in this psalm is that we need to be careful who we associate with. Because if we walk by, that's one thing. If we stop for a few minutes to listen, that's a whole nother thing. If we sit down and we join in with them, then we find ourselves in a whole nother dilemma there, because not all of the influence in our life are godly. We need godly influences. Paul warns us. He says, do not be fooled. Don't misunderstand this. Evil companions will, not might, not could, not it's possible. Evil companions will corrupt good morals. We get to the point where we can accept almost anything or almost anybody because they're our friend. I've known people in the past, and you have too, who were very strong in their beliefs, but when something happened that affected one of their friends or something happened that affected one of their family members, and it made them have to change their belief structure in order to continue being friends with that person. You know, that's the warning that we have here, is that if we allow ourselves to be influenced by the world around us, we can find ourselves in a very bad place. He says that if we don't walk, if we don't stand, if we don't sit, then we're going to be like a tree that's planted by the rivers of water. We're going to bring forth our leaf in our season. It's not going to wither. But in other words, what we do will prosper. God will prosper us because we're trying to live the kind of lives we ought to live. But then he says, but the ungodly are not so. They don't really have a root. There is no root to ungodliness. It's just there. And eventually it's going to be done away with. And it's going to be like the chaff that the wind blows away. And they're not going to be able to stand when it comes to righteousness. They're not going to be able to do any of those things or have any of those blessings. And we don't want to find ourselves in the midst of that. So we need to be careful, not just in our personal lives as far as looking at sin and not getting involved in sin and not allowing ourselves to take the second look or be drawn off into sin, but also in our relationships with other people, to find and surround ourselves with good, godly people who will help us in our walk with God. May God bless you. I hope this helps you as much as it helps me.